Hare Krishna, Mahabharata for kids. Let's begin with the introduction. The Mahabharata is the story of a bitter dynastic struggle which culminated in a war almost wiped out the entire dynasty. The word Maha means great and Bharata refers to the race of King Bharata, one of the illustrious ancestors of royal house featured in this great Indian epic. Later, the name Bharata also came to be identified with India as a whole. The original name of Mahabharata is Jaya Samhita. Later, it was known as Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is much more than just the history of the Bharata clan. The Mahabharata is the longest literary work in the world with more than 200,000 lines of verses. It is inspiring in both scope and impact, loved in every corner of India. It has inspired the philosophic thought, the literature, and the fine arts of many other countries besides India. Composed in Sanskrit several thousand years ago, it retains the power to move us profoundly. It's superb and sensitive of character, its daring action, and its deep philosophy continue to be meaningful even today. Rishi Vyasa, poet and philosopher, who is himself very much part of the story, is said to have composed the Mahabharata in his mind. He dictated it to Lord Ganesha, the elephant headed god who overcomes all obstacles and who is propitiated at the start of every undertaking. When it was completed, the gods in the heaven heard Vyasa's poem on earth many years after the terrible war between the Kauravas and the Pandavas depicted in the Mahabharata. Arjuna's great grandson King Janmejaya listened spellbound to the story of his forefathers, reciting by one of Vyasa's disciples. Millions of men, women, and children have heard or read the Mahabharata since then and been blessed by the beauty and the truth of this great work of art. Chapter 1 Bhishma Solomon Vow. Hastinapur, situated in the ancient land of Bharata, was ruled by the Kuru kings of the lunar race. King Santanu, like his ancestors, was a noble warrior loved by his people. One day, riding beside the river Ganga, he saw a woman of rare beauty, dressed in pale blue and adorned with gems. She shimmered like the sun kissed water of the stream. Santanu fell in love with this vision of beauty and asked her to be his queen. Gladly, my king, she said, but on one condition. Promise me that you will never ask me who I am or question anything I do. The moment you break the promise, I will leave you. Captivated by the charm of his mysterious maiden, Santanu readily agreed to her strange request. They married within a few days, and she proved to be a loving wife and a virtuous queen. After a year of happiness, she gave birth to a healthy and beautiful son. Santanu felt himself to be the happiest of men. However, that very night, the queen rose from her bed with the infant in her arms. Alone, she walked to the banks of the Ganga and threw the newborn into the deep, dark waters of the river. The king was appalled at this behavior but did not utter a word. His lips were sealed. He had promised his queen never to question her. Despite what had happened, he loved her deeply and did not want to lose her. 7 years went by, and each year the queen bore Santanu a healthy and beautiful son, only to drown him in the river Ganga. When she was about to drown her eighth child, Santanu could no longer control himself. With tears of grief and anger, he asked why she was killing their children. You have broken your promise, my king, and I must leave you, the queen said sadly. But hear my story before you judge me. I am not mere mortal, I am goddess Ganga. Now that I have fulfilled my purpose on earth, I must return to heaven. 8 son I bore you were the 8 Vasus, heavenly being cursed to be born in the world of men to atone for their sins. I have released 7 of them from the curse, and this child, the 8th Vasu, needs to live a complete life here before returning to heaven. He will be a worthy son to you, my king. I shall take care of him for a few years and then return him to you. Do not grieve. What was ordained has come to pass. With the baby in her arms, Ganga vanished from sight. Desolate Santanu went back to his empty palace. 16 lonely years went by. Then, one day, along the banks of the river Ganga, Santanu saw a strange sight. A handsome youth had held up the river's flowing water with a dam constructed of skillfully shot arrows. Santanu stood there watching the fate in silence and wondered when goddesses Ganga appeared before him. Radiant as ever, great king, it is time for you to meet your son. Devavrata, she said. He is well versed in all the arts of Kshatriya warrior. Nobody will be equal to him in wisdom. Ganga returned to heaven as father and son embraced. With great joy, Santanu took back his son. The people of Hastinapur rejoiced as Devavrata was crowned as the heir to the throne of the Kurus. Fate, once again, when Santanu fell in love with Satyavati, daughter of the chief of the fisher folk. Her father, however, would not agree to this union unless Santanu promised that Satyavati's son would become the heir. Santanu could not deprive the valiant Devavrata of his birthright, so he refused. Yet he was unable to forget Satyavati, and with time he became increasingly distressed. Devavrata discovered the cause of his father's unhappiness and took it upon himself to remove it. He renounced his right to the throne. He further vowed never to marry in order to ensure that there would be no other claimants to the throne. He undertook to live a life of perfect celibacy. Gods in the heaven showered flowers on the noble prince as he uttered the words that bound him to a life of sacrifice and loneliness. From then on, Devavrata was called Bhishma, he who fulfills the hardest of vows. Santanu married Satyavati, who gave birth to the two boys, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya, heirs to the throne of Hastinapur.